Hi folks, Mrs. Landon here. One thing I want to do is have you better understand what p-value is, because I'm noticing on assessments and things that people really aren't quite getting it. A few people are, but in general, this is a definition the AP board really does expect you to know. And in the past, I've seen it as a multiple choice, I've seen it as a free response, where you have to be able to understand what it means. So right here, I'm actually on page 533 in your textbook. If you want to reference it, you could. And here's what it says. The p-value is the probability computed, assuming H sub O is true, that the statistic that we chose, again, it could be a proportion or a means, would take a value as extreme or more extreme than the one that actually observed. That is what p-value is. So this is fairly wordy. Here's what I like to do when I have to define p-value, is I kind of summarize what that sentence just said. It's the probability of our statistic, right, given that H sub O was true. So let's say we compute a p-value and we end up getting that as like 2% is the p-value, and they want us to define that in context. It says here, this is what it actually means. So what is the probability that the statistics that we got from our sample, we went and we took a sample out there and we computed our statistics, and these statistics that we got from our sample, which we feel was done well, given the fact that H sub O is actually true. Now remember, we're doing a hypothesis test because we think H sub O isn't true. That's the reason. We think H sub O isn't true. We think H sub A is the real answer, and we're trying to see if that works. Well, when we took our sample and we computed the statistics, the result that we got, this is the sample that we got, and the chances that this sample happens would only be a 2% chance. But the darn thing actually happened. So that gives it a lot of weight, which means it is statistically significant, because it really only has a 2% chance to happening, but it happened when I took the sample. So that means there's something out there that is causing it to be different than H sub O. And if you read further down on here, it kind of gives basically what I just said, right? Small p-values are evidence against H sub O because they say that the observed result is unlikely to occur when H sub O is true. Again, if H sub O is true, this observed value happened, well, it probably shouldn't have happened, but it did. It has a 2% chance of happening, but it happened. So therefore, since it's less than our alpha, which we assume again is about 5%, this is where we would come in and say P is less than alpha, we reject H sub O, and we conclude H sub A, again, within context of our problem. Hopefully this is helpful because you're going to see it. Again, it's something the AP board really does expect you to understand, but it is a definition that tends to be a little bit trickier for people to define. When people are defining it, they're just kind of saying it's the probability that the statistic happens. Well, you're kind of there. It's the probability it happens given the fact that H sub O is true, but again, remember, we think it's not. That's why we're actually doing a test. So let me know if you need further explanation on that, and hopefully this helped.